Welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. My name is Richard Porter. I was raised in the state of Idaho. I'm definitely an American before I'm an Idahoan. I was raised here and left the state for 35 years and came back. I've seen a lot of things about different issues and definitely about guns. I am opposing 1389 because I was raised with guns. I believe in concealed weapons permits. I believe in the background check. I believe in the training that needs to happen. I believe in safety. I was raised with a third generation Idahoan. I was raised in a family that believes in safety and takes care of my privilege to have guns. It's not a right, but a privilege. I believe that we need to think about what we need to protect people in the state of Idaho. We need to think about our law enforcement that has pros and cons about the issues that are being brought up about this permitless type situation. And people that have spoken ahead of me, I believe of what some of us said about families and people that are concerned about what may happen if we go permitless compared to having a permit. We need to think about this really, really hard. It's not something that we technically should open it up to whatever. I mean, there's 11,000 signatures that have said they want to have permitless, not even have a concealed weapon permit. It's 11,000 of over hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Idaho. I'm a gun person. I've always been a gun person. I protect my rights and I protect what needs to happen for the public and society. But we need to think about people that are policemen and people that protect us. They could be your brothers and sisters, family, all that kind of stuff. They have concerns about what this can of worms could open up. So I think we need to definitely think about what can come about going permitless compared to having a permit. So I appreciate your time and any questions I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Richard? See none. Thank you very much for being here, sir. I'd like to mention that Doug Nelson and Shirley Nelson are here in support but did not wish to testify. All right, Rich Cheney, and after Rich will be Shirley Van Zandt. Welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, committee members. My name is Rich Cheney. I've been a resident of Meridian for 10 years now, and I am here representing the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance along with Greg Pruitt's 11,000 signatures. I'd like to clarify a little bit. Those 11,000 signatures are in support of the bill in front of us today. A few weeks ago, we had 1,000 people come join us for a rally at the Capitol. That 1,000 people expands to 11,000 people that signed petitions supporting this. And then there's yet again another multiplier for folks supporting the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, for folks supporting this particular bill. And so hopefully my testimony is taken on their behalf. My goal here today is to address a couple of misconceptions about the bill that's before us. One of them, Senator Hill expressed a question earlier about reciprocity with this bill, and I would like to address that. Last year, when HB 89 was being considered, there were some concerns that I heard about reciprocity with Alaska suffering when they went to a permitless carry system. I hadn't heard about that, and so we decided to go ahead and get the answer from the horse's mouth, if you will. So we contacted the organization in Alaska, the state offices that are in charge of administering the Alaska permit system. And they told us that they had no reciprocity issues after moving to permitless carry, that there was absolutely no impact from states that did or did not recognize the Alaska permits. So I do not believe that there's going to be any impact on reciprocity from this bill. Another misconception that we've heard here today is that 81% of Idaho gun owners support the current system and don't support this bill. The question is about statistics and polls and how the questions are asked. I actually have a little bit of insight into this 81%. This is a recent survey according to the full-page ad that was in yesterday's statesman, this is a recent survey conducted by Everytown, the anti-gun organization in New York. I happen to know a couple of gun trainers in town, and they were actually contacted as part of this poll, and the question posed to them was very similar to, hey, did you know that this permitless carry is going to take away the training, and that's probably going to impact your business? Do you support that? And so you can imagine what some of them might have answered, that how they support the training. One instructor that I talked to said, no, absolutely, I support permitless carry. And even after that statement, there's still a good chance he's counted in that 81%. So, you know, polls and how you ask the questions and how you score it, there's always some debate on the benefit of that. But really what this bill does, as Mr. Pruitt alluded to earlier, this is really a common sense gun bill. Right now in Idaho, if you don't have a permit, you would be illegal right now. And you could go from legal, illegal, legal, illegal. This bill simply allows you to put on a coat in Idaho. It's perfectly legal to open carry right now anywhere in the state. If you put on a coat, now you're a criminal. Nothing could be more common sense gun legislation than allowing a gun owner to wear a coat. And so with that, I think I've used my time. I would like to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cheney. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Yes, Senator Stennett.
Thank you. Good morning. Just a quick question, because I'm not as familiar with your group as some others might be. Were all of those 11,000 Idahoans that sent that to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Shirley Van Zandt, and after Shirley will be Zac Brooks. Welcome to the committee, Shirley.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman McKenzie, Senator Lodge, and members of the committee. My name is Shirley Van Zandt. I am an Idahoan, a mother, a nurse practitioner, and volunteer with the Idaho chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I vote in every election. I'm here today to express really deep concern with Senate Bill 1389 and to ask you to vote against the bill. Senate Bill 1389 would dismantle Idaho's concealed carry permitting system. This would make it easier for criminals and people who have never had firearm safety training to carry hidden and loaded handguns on the streets of Idaho's communities. Idaho's concealed carry permit system is a popular and nearly century-old effective method of increasing public safety around guns. Senate Bill 1839 would dismantle this permitting system in two fundamental ways. First, it would eliminate the training requirements. This would allow people who have not been trained on how to handle and fire a gun to carry a concealed loaded weapon in our communities. Second, this bill would strip law enforcement of its ability to ensure that anyone who seeks to carry a concealed loaded gun first passed a background check, making sure that they have a clean criminal record. The changes that are proposed by this bill would make it easier for people who do not know how to handle a loaded weapon, and even those with violent criminal records, to carry a concealed loaded gun in the spaces and places we all share with our families, our friends, and particularly our children. Clearly, there's nothing really reasonable or even necessary about this approach. In fact, as has been mentioned before, Idahoans overwhelmingly support the existing permitting requirements and strongly support the permitting process and believe permit holders should undergo certain training requirements. Simply put, I do not believe that this bill represents the will of most Idahoans. In closing, I believe we should be proud of our current permitting system. I urge you, therefore, to align with the majority of Idahoans and nearly 90% of Americans who support concealed carry permitting requirements. Please reject Senate Bill 1389's attempt to dismantle this system and to dismantle sensible public safety around guns. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you very much for being here. Are there any questions for Shirley? Seeing none, thank you very much. Zac Brooks, and then after Zac will be Daniel Adams. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, committee. Thank you for holding this hearing. Most of what I had prepared has already been spoken to, but I am a resident of District 11. I have spoken to city police chiefs, deputies, and other residents of District 11 that are in support of it as well. What I would like to address is more of the permitting process that people are so concerned about and the safety. I was going to address the article that was in the Idaho Statesman about the 380 county police chiefs. One of their concerns is the ability to ensure persons carrying guns in our communities know how to handle firearms safely via the permit process. I currently am a member of the Front Sight Firearms Training Institute in Pahrump, Nevada, and a holder of the Idaho Enhanced Permit. And I can tell you that this so-called ability to ensure persons carrying firearms is a false sense of security. As was mentioned earlier, the standard permit requirements allowed me to initially use my Hunter's Ed card for proof of firearms training. I'm not sure about how everyone else's Hunter's Ed class went, but I didn't even touch a firearm in my Hunter's Ed class. So during the enhanced permit class, we had to display the ability to hit a very large paper target at close range under very controlled circumstances. There was no actual training or required demonstration pertaining to the handling of the firearm other than pointing it down range, concealing the firearm, holsters, their various types, how to safely holster and unholster, or how to properly deal with a malfunction, etc. These are all things that I learned on my own through Front Sight. My point in all of this is the requirements in place do little to ensure someone knows how to properly handle a firearm, and that those of us that choose to conceal carry already take it upon ourselves to learn how to safely handle, carry, and shoot our firearm. I support keeping the permit process for reciprocity's sake, but otherwise it does little more than require a law-abiding citizen to ask for permission to exercise a God-given right and forces them to relinquish more of their hard-earned money that could otherwise be spent on a nice holster or some more ammo to train with. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Brooks? Seeing none, thank you for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Madam Chairman.
All right, Daniel Adams and then Alexandra Kincaid. Daniel?
Thank you. You know,
Welcome to the committee,
this would be
sir.
something I normally would support, but because of the way that this bill is written, I have 4 points that I want to go over that are a problem. Now, myself, you know, I know a lot about the history of why we even have this regulation in the first place. My father and his compatriots were the ones that, because of the Gun Control Act of 1968, pushed for the amendment to our state constitution to provide the protections. And at that time, the law enforcement community demonified anybody that would dare conceal their weapon and said that we had to leave this within the purview of the state, so that, you know, only, and I believe one of the statements was that it was only a deviant that would conceal the fact that they were armed. Therefore, all decent people would have their weapons shown. And that was the reason why this concession was given to law enforcement when our state constitution was amended a decade after the Gun Control Act of 1968. That being the case, I have a firm belief that we certainly have the right to bear arms, and even the provision in our state constitution that provides that the legislature can control that should not be there. Now, I certainly have been victimized also by local law enforcement on a number of occasions. And going through these requirements, especially the residency requirement that I was appalled to see was part of this, gives the officer this opportunity then to launch an inquiry into whether or not said person that for whatever reason they happen to find that they had a supposed concealed weapon happens to be a resident of the state of Idaho or not. Now, if you've seen, especially on YouTube with all of the modern stuff that gets around on the internet, what that is translated out to in Texas when an officer wants to verify that a person isn't a felon or isn't whatever else. I don't wish to be detained, especially cuffed and stuffed by an officer, for him to come through some type of investigation on whether or not I have a particular right and whether he has the right to be molesting me. Certainly in Idaho City and out there in New Plymouth, the testimony of a few officers was that they were in fact attempting to kill me.
Sir, please speak to the bill.
I am speaking to the bill. The residency requirement was the first thing I covered, ma'am. That is...
Speak to the bill.
That is in the bill, ma'am.
Go
It
ahead.
is actually the second line.
Go ahead.
Under the provision that allows for the concealed carry without the permit for persons over the age of 21.
Speak to the bill.
Are you
Go.
unfamiliar with what I'm talking about?
No, I'm very familiar with what
Okay.
you're talking about. Please continue, but speak to the bill.
The second piece that I would say is a travesty is the fact that it now is trying to regulate persons between the ages of 18 and 21 outside of city limits. Now, I certainly backpacked a lot, and I'm sure you're familiar with the various wildlife that's available in our tall and uncut. Certainly the wolves being introduced by the feds that have become very plentiful in our mountains and trees around. And to take away this ability for an 18-year-old to be able to place a handgun in their backpack should they come across a wolf or a mountain lion or other animal that might be desiring to do them harm, it certainly puts them at risk. Under the law as it is without this amendment, they would have the ability to carry a handgun or other firearm of suitable type in their backpack. This would actually put them in violation of the law for doing the same with this regulation outside of city limits. Another one that it creates here is this idea of probation under the proposed I guess, under I think it's 11 provision I believe. And it actually puts in that a person has this restriction if they have not completed probation for this crime involving the intent in its language. Well, the obstructing charge has the word intent in the language, 18705. And it does not clarify in this bill that they had to do a violent act. Certainly, resisting the officer by moving your hand when he tries to handcuff you would be categorized as resisting or obstructing. And certainly, under that, then that would put them into a permanent prohibition against being able to get a concealed weapons permit, because unless they accept probation, which I refused, they would not be able to meet this criterion and would never regain the right. There's also, hidden in the very bottom of this under your Section 2, one thing that I find in many pieces of legislation particularly appalling, and that is special privileges being given to law enforcement and security personnel. Now, certainly, if you wish there to be a permission one, as I think letter C provides that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can come apply to a board or person in charge of the building in order to have permission to carry the firearm concealed, would arguably be reasonable. However, specifying that an automatic privilege is granted to law enforcement and privileged personnel is a travesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Are there any questions for Mr. Adams? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. Alexandria Kincaid, and then David Steed.